is Straight to the Source, your destination for food, views and big ideas. Brought to you by two of the best in the business, Tonya Barr and Lucy Allon. Join them to discover some of Australia's most dynamic food, hospitality and agribusiness leaders.
Hello and welcome to Food, Views and Big Ideas. I'm Tonya Barr.
And I'm Lucy Allen, and this is the podcast from us here at Straight to the Source.
In this podcast, we will be introducing you to the people who are driving our food and hospitality industry forward. Whether it be on the land, in the water, in the kitchen, or from the boardroom.
Each of our guests are playing a significant role in the evolution of Australia's food identity and culture, and we want you to know who they are, their views and their big ideas. We're coming to you today from Camaragal land, and we'd like to begin by paying our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today, we're talking to Ben Devlin, who, along with his wife Yen, are the force behind Pipit Restaurant in Pottsville, a coastal town in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. Pipit is a modern dining experience based around coastal and seasonal ingredients and wood-fired cooking, and one which has earned the duo a whole host of accolades, including being recently crowned the Regional Restaurant of the Year in the 2023 Good Food Guide Awards. Ben, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real honour.
Well, I guess, first of all, congratulations on your recent awards at the Good Food Guide Awards, as well as winning Regional Restaurant of the Year, which is really an amazing accolade and very well deserved. You also took home 2 hats. How did that feel?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was very surprising. The whole thing was very surprising. I think, we got nominated for Restaurant of the Year for the whole state, which is just
amazing, insane.
Like it's so to be there and to see all those people and spend some time in that room with old friends, and it was a beautiful night. And then to come away with a win and 2 hats was pretty spectacular. Like couldn't have asked for anything more. It was amazing. Yeah,
it must have felt like quite an achievement because, as you said, you were finalists and up against some incredible names and venues. So well done to you and Yen and the whole team. But where I'd like to start with chatting to you've had quite a career and you've worked at some incredible restaurants, both in Australia and overseas. But I'd love to start back at the beginning and ask, where and how did you start cooking? And, what was the spark that lit the fire for you?
My first job was working at a cafe in Byron, which was quite handy for me because it was right on the beach, and it was just working for my next door neighbor who was the chef, washing dishes, making burgers. I remember my first day there, I helped them make a cake. They just sort of, please follow this recipe, make this cake. And then at the end of the day, there was a cake. It was done. And that was really kind of formative for me, I think, at the time, because it was the other work that I'd done was helping dad on construction sites. And it's kind of like a long payoff to see the thing finished. Whereas this was start with raw ingredients, do some work, there's a payoff. It's a done thing. You can see it and it's good and you can feel happy about that. So that kind of made me feel attached.
Yeah, your handiwork is there to see and feel proud of. You've got that immediate reward.
Yeah.
So what I guess then led you to explore that in a more serious way and think about it more as a career? Or did you think about it as a career at that point?
At that exact point, I was probably thinking more like I would like to shape surfboards. I was quite interested in that. But I guess spending more time working and then also working with my cousins at the restaurant that they had in town eventually when they knew that I was capable to do some work, that kind of changed it a little bit because my cousins who were running the restaurant that their father started, they had sort of traveled overseas and done various bits of work and worked in really nice restaurants. So that was kind of, I guess, a bit of an insight, seeing the way that they worked and how they were talking about things and, the experience that they'd had, that kind of, I guess, led me to sort of see it as something that was quite exciting, something that I could do and, have a really interesting life and career out of. So, and, it helped that at the time, I felt like I was doing a pretty good job. Like, I felt like I was, they were saying that I was doing well. And that kind of encouragement obviously makes you feel like, oh, good. This is, I haven't always felt like I've succeeded at a lot of things in life. Feels like I'm succeeding at this. So yeah, let's keep going with this. This makes me happy. So that's quite fortunate.
Yeah. And so you went on to do an apprenticeship?
I did. So I did the school-based apprenticeship through high school, which at the time was all work at school, and then you would do a couple of weeks work experience through the year. At the time, I was still working at a couple of places around Byron. So that sort of let me finish my HSC and get me, I guess, the school-based credits for my first year of my apprenticeship. And then when I finished that, I moved to Brisbane and took up my apprenticeship, first at a place called El Centro, which is not there anymore, but was around for a really long time.
I remember El Centro, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big place. But then I moved to a place called Lat 27 with a guy called Brad Jolly, who still, I think, has Alchemy Restaurant in Brisbane.
Yeah, Brad and Angelica, great restaurateurs up in the Brisbane scene. Yeah.
I guess when I went to Brisbane, I must have been a good food guide or something, but basically I wanted to find out, I guess, not specifically what was the best restaurant, but where were the best chefs. And like El Centro came up, Brad Jolly came up. I purposefully wanted to work for him.
Well, I love that the Good Food Guide was at that point in time your barometer for where to start the search. So there you go. So let's fast forward from baking cakes in cafes, doing your apprenticeship and working in some amazing places in Brisbane to heading overseas and working at, well, let's face it, one of the best restaurants in the world at Noma. How did that come to be?
So for a couple of years at that point, I'd been wanting to move overseas. I wasn't really sure where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. I'd sort of been working at the time, had been working for Brad at Lat 27 and then working for David Pugh at Restaurant 2. And then working with first Ryan Squires, but then Kim Machin at Urbane. And, various people that had kind of come in and out of those kitchens. And I'd obviously heard a lot about working in London, and that was kind of like the place where everything was sort of happening. And a friend of mine I'd worked with in Brisbane, had gone overseas and come back. He had been working in London. He'd been working I think maybe he worked at Le Manoir for a little bit. And then he did work experience at Noma in Denmark. And he sort of told me about a few of them, and Noma just sounded really interesting. I hadn't really otherwise heard of it. Did some research. I found that Renee had been out to Melbourne Food and Wine at that point. There was a little bit of information on it. It seemed pretty interesting. I just sent them an email and just asked, what's going, like, can I do a stage? Can I come and do some free work? Because I've heard that, we can do that. And they just said, yep, that's fine. Come over. This is the intake date for the next season. So I sort of went over and did a bit of traveling. So I sort of went there and I just sort of told them pretty openly, look, I'd really like to stay. I'd like to live here and work here, and I think it'd be really good. I worked really hard for a couple of months and just kind of kept prodding them along and saying, yeah, look, I'm really interested. I'd like to be here, and then eventually they just gave me a job. I was just in the right place at the right time. But then, it gets number one in the world, and like the server crashes, and they move it to a bigger server, and the server crashes again, and there's a million requests for I think I was told that it was actually a million requests for reservations, and I was like, well, that doesn't seem real. Like that's not the way that things work, but apparently it was, and
that's crazy.
Went crazy.
Yeah. Again, the power of these awards and, the attention that they can bring. So you spent some time there. What are the biggest things that you took away from that experience and still apply today or now?
Well, I guess at the time leaving sort of Brisbane specifically, so I hadn't been working in Sydney or Melbourne, so I can't really speak to what the scene was like there, but I got the impression it was kind of similar in some ways. The things that we were doing were very much focusing on, I guess, what was happening in Spain specifically, but just Europe in general. If you could get something that was luxurious from further away, then that was the game. That was what you wanted. You wanted things flown. You wanted Marin from WA. You wanted the best Wagyu from wherever it was in Australia, and you wanted to be getting those really premium ingredients, Spanish ham and that sort of stuff. And I guess going there, it feels like, it'd be very easy to come back and go, well, I want that Scandinavian stuff because that's what I was working with and that's really nice and interesting. But obviously the lesson there was these are the things we use because they're special to us. And this is why we use it, because it's special to this area. We're trying to talk about this area and what things are like here right now. And that I found really interesting. And I remember coming back for a short holiday when I was still working there and going to the beach and seeing like the herbs that I've been picking on the beach in Denmark that I'd never heard of, never thought of, never seen. And they were here. Some of them were just here. And like, I've been going to these beaches my whole life, I've been walking on these rocks my whole life, and I'd never thought to look. So that was kind of the big thing, where it was like, what you see around you is special. The things that happen in your area, they're special because they're happening there and to you, and telling the story of what those things are is, the most, important and special thing that you can do, because it is bringing attention to people that need it, whether it's your suppliers or, producers, or it's just giving people a good reason to come to you because what you have is special.
And unique.
That isn't unique to here, it's unique to everywhere. Everywhere has these things, and it's your job to sort of go, well, why should people come here?
Yeah.
What do we have?
Yeah.
And it feels like we've got a really good story to tell in this area because of all the things that we have, because it is very unique. But I mean, realistically, everywhere has that. You just got to like quieten your mind a little bit and find it, spend the time on it. So yeah, that was the big thing for me coming out of there. I mean, there's recipes that we were doing that I still use. There's, methods of working and techniques that I would use that I still use. But realistically speaking, it was just the way of framing the question, what are you doing and why is it special?
Yeah.
The way of thinking about what's happening, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's where the Australian restaurant and dining scene is now. But I think it took us a while to get there, as you said. And I've got a very clear memory of when Rennie was here on a visit, and he spoke at the Sydney Opera House. And I remember him saying, like, you guys have got the most incredible, unique ingredients here, but you're not using them. What's going on? Like, he just couldn't understand it. And I just remember that I feel like that was a real turning point for Australia and Australian chefs and dining, of like, stop looking overseas and actually start looking in your own backyard. And I feel that was a tipping point for things to change. Why Pottsville, and what led to Pipit opening?
So I had been, after living overseas, I'd been working in Brisbane for a while with the thought of wanting to have a business. At the time, fairly happily, that business was going to be in Brisbane because, my partner was from Brisbane. I'd already lived there before I went overseas, and after I came back, I was pretty settled there. After Esquire, I wanted to start a business straight away, and the one that I was going into sort of fell through, which in fairness is pretty fortunate looking back on it. I was just sort of approached about a job that I didn't originally have a whole lot of interest in at first, and that was Paper Daisy at Halcyon House. The concept of being in a hotel just did not really appeal to me at all. Eventually, like, the owners were fairly persistent and really, really nice, and sort of having a look at it and having a bit of a think about it. Originally, it was sort of a bit of a short-term thing, but yeah, I ended up sort of staying there for 3.5 years, and that, again, for me, was a really interesting learning experience, because Esquire was amazing to work in Brisbane, working at a very high level, but it was very singular in its focus and very uncompromising. And there's a lot to be said about that as a concept. But because it was very singular in its focus and it was very uncompromising, it didn't always make everyone very happy. Some people, if they didn't fit within the parameters of what they were getting or what they would be served, then they would leave not necessarily happy with their experience. And life is too diverse for that, I guess.
Yeah. People
are too diverse for that. Whereas somewhere like Paper Daisy, it was the polar opposite. It was whatever people want, they're going to get, and you are going to give that to them. And you can have your menu, and you'll think about making a very nice menu. And we want you to do something that's very unique. Having said that, if someone would like a tomato pasta, you will be making them a tomato pasta. And that was a very interesting learning curve for me. At first, it was kind of like, I'm not going to do that. It's the middle of service. What are you talking about? Like, I don't have time for this. There's something on the menu. They can order that. And that's not the way the game works in that kind of place. So I didn't necessarily love that at first, but I think that was a good thing for me to learn, be a little bit more flexible with people, and find a bit of a middle ground. But it certainly also led to me wanting to have this business and going, well, I do need to be flexible and offer enough things for people, but I do also need to say, we are doing the following things. And so I've given you plenty of options, and I can fit in a range of things, but these are the things we're doing. So it will work or it will not work for you. So it's, it was a nice way to kind of blend the two together. But basically it brought me back to the area, and I kind of fell in love with it and realized that I had a lovely upbringing. And if I wanted to have this upbringing for my family, then this is where I wanted to be. So we decided that Brisbane was no longer on the cards, and found a place down here. And Pottsville specifically was just, the timing was good for the location, and it works out pretty well. It's a nice little town. It's very quiet, but it's close to a lot of things. It's pretty central for a lot of stuff. It's close to the beach. It's near near good farming areas. It's near the rainforest. Yeah, it's a really nice spot.
And you found the site, and you and Yen built the restaurant pretty much from scratch yourselves. What was that experience like?
It was interesting. We had just had our daughter Penny just before we got the keys to the site, basically. So that was interesting.
What do they say? Don't do all these kind of things when you've just had a baby and then all these things happen. Yeah. You just have to like grab the moment.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Phil Wood came and ate here not long, like when his partner Liz was pregnant, and they had just sort of signed on to Ursula's. And I remember sort of talking to them like, yeah, good luck with that shit. Like, it's going to be great. But I had sort of remember like giving them a card at the end being like, from welcome to the child and restaurant at the same time club. It's fantastic to induct you into it. But yeah, it did allow me to have, some nights off, which was good. But basically to save money, I did all the tiling, did all the painting, did all the rendering. Dad helped with some of the furnishing because he's a retired carpenter, and we just kind of got really stuck into it, which was really good. But a little bit, I probably would do it differently next time. It also meant that I was very much in like tradie mode. And then when it got to the point where it was like getting close to the opening date, I had still like work to do, things to paint, polish, clean, whatever it was. But I wasn't in a really good headspace for like thinking creatively at the time. Yeah. So it was like, you're going to need a menu in 2 weeks. And like, fuck, I haven't thought about food in, I don't know, a couple of months now. I don't really feel prepared for this as much as I would like to be. I haven't been going to the market as much. And so I would definitely restructure that.
But then on the flip side, your and Yen's stamp is 100% there. Your heart and soul went into it. And I think Tonya and I have been lucky enough to dine with you, and you can really feel that in the restaurant, that you guys are there. You're present even in everything that's part of that experience. And I think that's something very special. And I think that's something that comes from having been so involved in that process of bringing it to life. And your kitchen is designed around that incredible central charcoal pit, and your dishes sort of built around the flavours and versatility of wood fire cooking. Where did you first learn to cook with fire?
Very small amounts of coal grilling at Noma was, to be honest, the first time I'd had experience with it. But that was, I mean, they have a much better section for it now. But at the time, that was literally those small Weber rectangular boxes that like sit on the ground with little fold under legs. It was 2 of those, and like just briquettes.
So not even like a hibachi, or like a kind of hibachi sort of setup?
No. And like as in like outside, out the back.
Right. Okay.
Not in the kitchen.
Okay.
Just in the back, and that was minor at the time. It was like just a little bit of garnishing stuff. They weren't cooking like bits of meat or anything on there. Very minimal stuff. But that was good to kind of get into. At Esquire, we had a slightly larger grill, which was probably more of a bit more time working on that. But it was the grill at Paper Daisy, basically. And, at that point, I was the head chef of the restaurant. It was very much like, just figure it out. Like,
right.
You've got a grill, just get in there and do some stuff. So I don't really necessarily want to say the word self-taught, because that's like, seems a bit over the top, but it was just kind of like just trial and error. Just get in there and do some stuff. Things will work and things won't work, and you'll just have to, monitor it a bit better. So a lot of trial and error basically. But the most of it was little bits at Esquire on a small grill, bigger one at Paper Daisy. And then now it's just, I mean, if you count Paper Daisy, it's sort of 7 or 8 years of working on a similar style of grill, and just finding the things that work for you.
Yeah, well, having sat at the bar to enjoy our dinner, Tonya and I watched you cooking and handling everything on the central charcoal pit, and it's so intuitive. You know, you're in that moment. You're just, you know, you're really working with the flow of heat and the particular protein or ingredient that's on the fire, and it's an incredible experience to watch. And the other thing that you do very differently at Pipit is your approach to ingredient sourcing and you know, the things that you will and won't feature on the menu. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we are a little bit strict on ourselves with what we want to serve. And that is, I guess it's a personal choice for us. And sometimes it's potentially making the degree of difficulty a lot harder than maybe it otherwise needs to be. I guess we've made decisions about what we think is a good representation of our area, what suits the style of food we want to serve, and what we think is, I guess, sustainable in the right kind of ways. So we don't use a lot of farmed meat. We use duck. We have used chicken and sort of poultry. Other farmed meats, I'm not necessarily personally opposed to them, you know, as a general rule, but I don't think they hugely fit the style of food we want to serve from a weight, you know, like from a balance perspective. But also, I guess, I'm mildly concerned about, at least with some of the more intensively farmed stuff. I know that there is like some really beautifully regeneratively farmed things in our area. There's people that are doing like such good work, and what they're doing is the impact is minimal, or they're actually improving their, their environment, their surroundings. But it doesn't feel like the right fit for us. So as a personal consumer, those are the things that I seek out and I choose to eat. But as a business, they're probably not the things that we're going to be using as much. What we do have is, really good seafood from this area, which again, we're pretty strict on what we use. We talk to the people from the Good Fish Guide about what is, considered sustainable, what is considered, use it, but maybe don't use too much of it, and what you shouldn't use. And we sort of stick by those kind of guidelines. And that means that there's some things that, again, we just don't use, which would be nice to use potentially, like say, king prawns from this area, which are stunning, like the best, and certain types of seafood, or certain types of fish rather. But we also just go, well, we know there's other stuff, so we're just going to make our decisions based on that. It's probably a little stricter than it needs to be. There's definitely producers that are doing amazing things that we potentially could be using that we maybe don't. But I guess it's just us saying, well, these are the things that we feel fit the best. We don't want to pass judgment on whether they're sustainable or whether they're working in a good way, because that's not really for us to say. But what we do is what we think feels right for us, and our menu and our position.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, prawns are a no, which is a shame because I love them. But, it seems like maybe if I want my child and maybe hypothetical grandchild to have them as well, they could potentially use a minor break, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as a diner, I mean, it certainly doesn't appear to limit the breadth or versatility of your menu, and hopefully it sparks some questions with some of your diners that therefore you can then, that educational explanation of why you're not serving those things, I guess, stimulates a question for them and a point of contemplation for them, which I think is a really important part of everyone understanding sustainability in the true sense of the word, and the impact that has on menus. And as you said, you're surrounded by incredible produce and a real expression of the coastal area that you're in. So I love that approach to the menu. And you also, fermentation is a big part of what you do as well. Is that something that you learnt from Noma, or is that just an application of using produce to its greatest extent, a kind of zero waste approach?
So when I was working at Noma, we were doing minor bits of fermentation, but to be honest, as a chef in the kitchen in a section, it's not something we were really doing. I know that when I was there, the test kitchen was starting to work on things like garum and some of the other ferments, but it was a couple of years before that was really implemented. So that was not something that I really saw in my time there. They've put out a fantastic book, which has got some really great information in it. So I've definitely benefited from that, but it's not something that I learned when I was there. It's definitely more things that I've just picked up at sort of by trial and error through the time Paper Daisy and here. And that was just very much sort of going, well, yeah, I don't want to waste these things, whether it's from a cost perspective, a sustainability perspective, or, I mean, I have this sort of like a burnt-in memory from Brad Jolly when I was doing the Nestle Golden Chef's Hat as an apprentice, and we were talking about what we might be able to do, and I think we had scallops, and he was saying, right, yeah, get the scallops, take them out of the bag because they were in a bag. He's like, if there's any juice in that bag, keep that, put it in the sauce because it's got flavor. It's going to add to it. All these things have flavor. And to be honest, like the food we were doing at that time didn't have we weren't really fermenting anything. We weren't really doing any of that stuff. But that concept of saying there's more flavor there, like you can find it and use it. That's the thing that sort of stuck a little bit. And so a lot of it is going, right, yeah, these products have a lot of flavor. They might be the stem or the leaves or the roots or the spine or whatever it is. There's a thing with flavor, and there's a good chance that it's beneficial. So find a way to harvest it and get it in there. Obviously, there's some hopeful cost savings in it. To be perfectly honest, most of those cost savings are offset by the fact that it's quite labor intensive. So yes, you are getting a better return on the product you're spending money on, but you're also spending money on turning it into something. So I would say, in fairness, the cost savings are often negligible. What you do hopefully have is, again, a more unique product. You've got something that people might sometimes buy, like other businesses might sometimes buy, but you've made it. So in theory, you've got a product that you can't buy because it's slightly different. Like say if you're making a miso or a kimchi or a garam on a unique product, that's a product that you couldn't buy. So that's a good point. But I guess from our perspective, it's just a larger part of the story.
Yeah, and building those flavor
profiles.
The flavor? Yeah, exactly. Building those flavor profiles. I love that, what you learned as a young chef in those kind of foundational years and skills is what sort of informed that approach that you're taking now. And that's actually a really nice segue to, you mentioned the Nestle Golden Hat Awards, but also Appetite for Excellence, and you were involved in that as a finalist and a People's Choice winner in the early years of the awards when it first launched.
Yeah, it was the second year.
But yourself and Yen are really big mentors and supporters of young talent, and I'd love to hear what you learned from those experiences as a young chef and how you apply that sort of mentoring and nurturing now as a business owner.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting one. The first time I went in the Golden Chef's Hat as an apprentice, I wasn't necessarily super excited to do it, or it wasn't something I was seeking out to do. It was something that sort of Brad said, you should do it. It was a team's thing. There was another apprentice at work, and we did it together as a team. He was quite keen on it. Yeah. I mean, I was happy to do it, but it wasn't something I was looking to do. But I remember having not the greatest week at work potentially, and not necessarily feeling so great about what I was doing or my skill level. Maybe
confidence.
I was probably pretty low. Yeah, I was pretty low down the ladder at that point. And then I remember going and doing this competition and winning the state, award or whatever it was. And it feels bad, but I remember looking around the room going I've beaten these people. Yeah, that's good. I must be okay. I must be working at a pretty good level, by comparison. And, you don't want to take this massive ego boost of going yeah, I won. I'm better than people around me. But it was I genuinely felt like I was very low. I didn't feel like I was at a good level at the time. And so to get that little bit of confidence was I'm actually not that bad at my job. This is pretty good. This makes me feel nice and help me continue along. So that was really handy. And then, meeting people from other states who are, in the same position as you potentially, but obviously in a different place, and, hearing that they had maybe similar experiences or similar issues and just having a chat and a drink, and, that was really nice.
That peer-to-peer kind of experience and community and connection.
Yeah, because I wasn't really getting that at the time. When you're an apprentice, you probably don't have a lot of money, wasn't really going out, wasn't seeing other hospitality people at the time. And then, Appetite for Excellence. I mean, the first year I was in it, Ian Todd, who I think now is in like Fiji, but he had restaurants in Tasmania. And then the second year I was in it, there was Jake Nicholson, who's at Blackbird, and his now wife, who was in the front of house program.
Penny, yeah.
It was just like being connected with these people, talking to the chefs. Like I remember meeting Tetsuya, and, you know, I remember the first year I was in it, I just qualified. You know, I was arguably too young to be in that competition. I was 21, and Michelle Roux was there at the awards night.
I remember that, yeah.
For some reason, like, he phrased the question when he was talking to everyone there, that he phrased the question like, how long have you been qualified for? I don't know, maybe it was like a translation thing, or like, or it's maybe that's a very relevant thing in coming up in the French ranks, but it seemed like an odd way to phrase it. But it was like he walked along the line of everyone, and I was the last person in the line. It was like, how long have you been qualified for? I was like, 5 years, 9 years, whatever. And I was like, 6 months, like not long. And he just laughed at me. He's like, you're a baby, like, just kind of walked off. And I was like, yeah, that was weird. Yeah, that was funny.
Like a royal audience.
Yeah, kind of
cooking royalty.
But it was.
But what I'm hearing from you is that it's a great confidence building experience. It's a great way to connect with other peers of a similar level and age, and, just opens your eyes to different experiences, opens doors to different connections. So how do you nurture your team now? How do you try and give confidence to the young talent that's around you?
Yeah, so we're extremely fortunate to have a range of young staff members that have been with us for a good few years now, which has been really nice. And like, my wife is Yen is the kind of person that if there's an idea, she went to university as a project manager, as a town planner rather. She's done sort of work in project management, in design thinking and experience design for the Queensland Museum. So a lot of the jobs that she's had have been very much like, let's collate this information. This is what I see we want to do. This is the project, or this is the goal. So what are the steps to get to that goal? It's this, and this. So start, do it. Like, just take the first step. Let's go.
Get the ball rolling.
Yeah. And, for someone like me, it's kind of like, often you might feel like you're on the lowest rung of the ladder, or you just like, you look at it and go, well, if I just do my work, keep my head down, things will happen and it'll be okay. And that is like sort of true, but it's sort of not really true. Like, if you don't personally take the steps, if you don't, go like isolate what it is, the thing that you want, or at the very least the area you want, and try and go, well, how do I take the steps to get towards that, and actively push those things, then you may not ever go past those early rungs. You won't always get seen. Like, you have to do that.
Yep.
So Yen's very good at setting up, frameworks for, how can we teach people to the hope is that anyone who leaves our business, in theory, is leaving to do their dream job or own their own business. Like, that's the dream for us,
basically. I love that. Giving them wings to fly.
Yeah. So how do we do that? And that was, a range of pop-ups for people. Ideally, they use the space, they find an idea that they like, they do it as a pop-up. We, might help them to sort of like, how do you brand it? What does it do? How do you charge for it? That sort of stuff. As a basic one, that is us running it with their idea, with the hope being that, maybe sometimes it's, you go out on your own a little bit, you take the branding, you take the idea, you charge the ticket price, you do the payments, we can help where we can, but it's yours, and you take it away, and please make it work, hopefully. Yep. So that's good. But then also, I guess, just trying to look at training opportunities. Ideally it's setting up maybe work experience in other places. Ideally, we'd like to sort of set up a framework where we can send a staff member away to work at another location. Maybe they also send one back to us. So we continue to pay our staff member, they continue to pay their staff member, but both get to train in a different way. Each business is maybe not so like stung by it. Like, obviously, you're not just losing a person for a week, you've got another person coming in.
Both businesses are gaining value,
Yeah, and then obviously the staff member of yours comes back hopefully, and they've learned some stuff and they feel energized, and they might bring you some new ideas as well because they've seen something and they think, hey, we can improve what we're doing now because these guys are doing that in a different way, and maybe that works for us.
Yep.
So it's it could have a range of ongoing benefits.
Yeah. I love that.
So trying to implement that a little bit, but then just encouraging them to get out there and do what they need to do to achieve their dreams.
Yeah. I love that approach. And, I think what that really comes through strongly in your business as well is that incredible partnership between yourself and Yen, and that kind of yin and yang of what you both bring to both the creative process, but also the impetus to make it happen. And you are really incredible mentors and leaders in the industry in that space of giving people the platform to then go forward and be successful. And I'll never forget John Hems saying to me and Luke when we first opened Restaurant CBD, he said, if people want to go, let them go. Give them your blessing, let them fly. And he said, almost always they'll circle back and come back to you at some point in life. They'll see the value of that opportunity that you gave them. And it's one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given as a business owner and somebody, wanting to see success for the next generation, which therefore, is success for our industry overall. We've spoken for a really long time and I'm so conscious of your time. And I've learned so much, even though I've known you for so long and, been lucky enough with Tonya to experience Pipit, which was such an incredible dining experience. And anyone listening, if you're in northern New South Wales, you have to absolutely make a beeline for Pipit. One last thing I want to ask you about before I ask my final question is, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about these amazing fish prints that you do. I just love watching them come to life. How did that
just...
Oh, so listeners, you can't see, but Ben's just showing me a piece on the wall. But they are so beautiful. I just absolutely love the kind of almost the meditative approach that you take to them. And is that just a bit of another creative outlet?
Yeah, I mean it's an artwork that I saw someone do, or I saw the artworks. And I wanted one. I didn't really feel like I was in a position to buy one at the time. So I thought, I have fish and time. Let's figure this out. It is definitely something that I've found a lot of, joy from and sort of relaxation from. I sort of, at the moment, I've gotten a little slack on it because time's a little bit tighter. But we've started doing some classes on it as well, which is really good. We sort of did our first class this week and we've got another one next week, which is really nice. It's an interesting one because, it's bringing life back to the product. Well, hopefully bringing life back to the product, letting it sort of live on past, its date of, consumption. Yeah. For us, like the dream would be to have like loads of them done and framed and kind of just cycle them around sort of, this is on the menu, so let's put it up on the wall. And then, it's not on the menu anymore, so we'll swap it with something else that's on the menu now. That is going to be a time-consuming and expensive process. And also, I like to sell them because, it makes other people happy. And it's actually very interesting. Like, it's a very funny one. Like, the first time someone sent me a photo of an artwork of mine hanging in their house, it was this odd bit of very pride. Like this, I guess people have been paying money to come and eat at the restaurant. And that's the same, more or less. But for some reason, it was like you've paid money, and this thing is like it's in your house, and you're going to see it every day. Like, unless you get rid of it. Like, and it could be there for years. And I did that, and that is a really odd feeling. Like, you obviously like it enough that it's just a part of your life now, and it just stays there. And so that was kind of cool.
I love that. You've just given me goosebumps just saying that. I mean, I think it's what art's all about, isn't it? It's what brings you joy as the viewer of the artwork, and not just as the artist. It's what brings you joy, but it also is a memory of that point in time. So it has meaning, and it has, as you said, longevity, but also it just is, it's a reflection of something that happened and something that you have a wonderful memory of. So I think that's pretty special. Yeah.
I enjoy making it. It's a bit of a meditative process, and we get nice, unique ingredients. So we've done squid that we've printed using the ink from the squid. We've sort of tried making ink from charcoal and stuff like that as well to bring it back to the sort of the restaurant and what it is. made a really nice one for Michael from Encore, Michael Stoddard. That was a dish from Benelong, where it was John Dory with turnips and saltbush. And so we sort of printed these John Dories on the page and made it look like they were kind of like eating these turnips that were printed on the page. And yeah, like a representation of a dish as an artwork, which as a concept I really enjoy, that has been on the back burner of like, I really want to do more of those and haven't gotten around to it yet.
That's beautiful.
But it also has made me look at the produce itself differently, spend more time looking at it, thinking about the details of it. Like the dorsal fin on a tuna, like getting in a whole tuna, the dorsal fin, not only does it retract back flat, but literally the skin actually goes right over it and seals tight. So it's like if you had a sports car with a rear spoiler that folds back underneath the car again. So the fish is the most beautiful, like streamlined thing, and then this dorsal fin just pops out when it needs it, and then like hides right back down when it doesn't. Or the squid that's such a like ferocious hunter that it's got like a fish bigger than it stuck inside of it. So printing the squid and the fish that it caught, and yeah, just looking at the product differently because I'm trying to think about how can I bring it back to life, basically.
Yeah, and you're looking at the aesthetic in different ways than you do as a chef as well. And I love the way it informs a different understanding of that product and, the beauty behind its creation. And yeah, you're an artist in many different ways, which I think is a really beautiful expression of what you do at Pipit and with these beautiful artworks and their longevity over and above, the moment of taste that you get in a meal, that meal experience. So it's been so wonderful to talk to you. My final question before I allow you to go. Where do you think you'll be in 5 years? What's the vision?
Well, the long-term goal is the sort of kind of farmhouse restaurant in this area. That would be where we would love to find ourselves. Obviously, the funding on that particular project is step one, a problem to solve, number one. Land in our area has not gotten any cheaper, and the process of getting those things approved through council has not gotten any easier. Yep. So that's a challenging game. But the ideal for us would be, this place that is growing some things. It's allowing a bigger experience for the guests. They come and they can see the land. They can, be a part of it and feel a part of it for a while. And us as a business and as a family can sort of settle into it. Really sort of put down our roots in a nice way. I guess I've never necessarily been the person that's wanted to have lots and lots of businesses, although obviously I can see a benefit to that. It would be, I think, I'd love to have the restaurant and an ice cream shop and a pasta bar and that sort of stuff. But I think because I really like working, I really like cooking, I like being involved, I kind of just want that one really beautiful thing, and I want it to work really well. And then the other stuff, I guess, just kind of hopefully blends into it nicely. So, 5 years maybe, hopefully. Coming up to the end of our first 5-year lease here. So, we've got, maybe another 5 years of trying to save some cash and find a way to make that work. We'll see how we go.
Well, I have no doubt that if there are two people in this world that can make it happen, it will be you and Yen. And I can't wait to see that process evolve and see what comes to life. But in the meantime, myself and Tonya will definitely be making a beeline back to come and dine at Pipit, just so that we can not only toast your success, but enjoy another incredible dining experience. And as I said previously, just the heart and soul that goes into it is so tangible in that space. It's a beautiful thing to experience. So we very much look forward to that. Thank you so much for talking to us, and to our listeners. You have to seek out Pipit. You can look online at pipitrestaurant.com and you'll find them on Instagram. And the art prints, the book, everything that you and Yen do is just such a beautiful expression of food and place. So well done. Congratulations.
Appreciate
and
it.
Thank you for being with us here today.
No, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We really hope you enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed the conversation. You'll find links to anything mentioned in today's chat in the show notes. We have some extraordinary guests lined up, and we'd love for you to join us again. Please make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. We'd love feedback, good or bad, or perhaps a guest you'd love to hear from. Please just let us know. And the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing, who we're talking to, and where you'll find us around the country is to become part of our Straight to the Source community at straighttothesource.com.au/community. Until next time.